This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have a special guest who's consistently bringing positivity to the fantasy football community. He's always down to talk football, artificial intelligence, mental health, and the Fantasy Football Expo. It's Ronnie Evans. Welcome to the show, my friend.
What's up, Kevin? Thanks for having me on. I am so excited to dive into all of that and whatever else you want to talk about.
It's a pleasure to have you on here. You've done so much in the last couple of years just in this community. I know you have a history back with the community long ago. But I love all the positivity you bring, the connections that you've made. You've really gone out of your way to connect with people and help them learn about artificial intelligence. But really, it's about that networking in the community, and you've done a great job with that. So thrilled for you where you're at right now. For listeners and viewers that are unfamiliar with what you're doing, can you share a little bit about your plans with Goodguy.ai, as well as the Judgement Seesaw series that you did during Mental Health Awareness Month?
So I'll start with the Judgement Seesaw, because I think beyond everything that I do in life, if my mental health is not in check, then none of it's possible. And the Judgement Seesaw was a 30-day sprint series I did during Mental Health Awareness Month, where I got people from around the industry. Kevin was on there as well. And we discussed people's journeys through mental health. And it wasn't always people's personal struggles, but observations they'd had. And talked a little bit about industry hygiene and tried to pair a mental health discussion into the fantasy sports industry and merge the two to help us all grow and be a little more accepting and be better people, but also be more understanding. And that's just an anecdote on that phrase. It's a fun exercise. The Judgement Seesaw basically takes the idea that you can't really judge and be understanding simultaneously and puts it at the forefront of your interactions with other people. And it helps you check yourself and make sure you're really listening. And so that was really meaningful. It is coming back. I'm not going to give a date yet, but at some point it will be back this season, and I will be doing it weekly on a scattered schedule based on who wants to come on, but then also adding in a new version of it called group therapy, where I hope to get like teams. Could be football guys, and get a few guys from Football Guys on and have like a group session where we sit down and talk about what's bothering everyone, what we're working through. Maybe Puka Nacua hasn't caught a touchdown in 4 weeks and everyone's caught up over that. But so the Judgement Seesaw and eventually group therapy will both be mental health centric shows that tie mental health back to the fantasy sports space and help people learn about each other and, champion growth, if you will. And then just to add in the Goodguy.ai stuff, Goodguy.ai is a project that's shifted a lot. It started off at the beginning of last year. I had set out and actually had some pretty serious discussions with some people about investments and putting together a full business that took AI and inserted into everything that happens in fantasy sports. It has shifted over time to now being an aggregate, and it's not live yet. It will be at some point this year, hopefully. But I'm taking my time with it. And the goal is to have a nexus, if you will, for the fantasy football and gambling industry to observe what's happening in the world of AI and then learn how to translate that back to what they have going on, the work we are doing, and how to enhance not just us as content creators, but also the user base, teach them how to do advanced research and accelerate and create more efficiency in their fantasy football, just gamesmanship in general. And so that's Goodguy.ai, the Judgement Seesaw. You mentioned it earlier. I don't know if it's fully intentional, but it seems like everything I'm doing right now in relation to this industry has a bit of a like empowerment of others flavor to it. And I do enjoy that. It's part of my motto.
I think that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean that series, that marathon that you ran through with so many great people, really, being vulnerable and sharing their experiences was amazing content. For consumers to just get more connected with those people, but also understand that they're not alone, in the experiences that they're having. So that's been fantastic. It's awesome to hear that there's more in store with that, because I think it's a valuable piece to this community. It's got a lot of potential. You really, I think that's awesome. And then obviously with with AI. I mean, it's an ever evolving topic. You're doing a
It's a
great
lot.
job with, yeah. So it makes sense to kind of take your time, kind of
Yeah.
figure out, how you're going to implement that. But obviously, you're gathering a ton of knowledge in the space, and looking to help people that are going to have questions, because it's inevitable that AI is going to be a huge part of everything we do at some point here. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love everything
I'll
you
throw
do.
in I'll throw
Yeah,
in one
that's
more
great.
thing. Just on the Goodguy.ai front, the first version of that will be a Substack, and it's actually like you can go register for the Substack ahead of time. It's goodguy.ai.substack.com and get in on a newsletter. But that is either going to be at the end of this week or the week after the expo. I'm kind of playing it by ear. But when it launches, it's going to have a handful of features in it. And in summation, it's essentially a weekly newsletter that catches you up on what's happening in the world of AI, but also related to AI in our industry. So like Rotobot AI. They're a fantastic startup. I've been working with them for about a year now. They're going to be at the expo at some point over the next month or so. I'm going to be doing a full feature for them in the newsletter. And then if you're subscribed, you'll get updates like that as new products come out, new like advantageous tricks of the trade, and then also generalized news like Canva, which a lot of people in the industry use right now. Just acquired Leonardo AI 2 days ago, which means that now Canva is going to have an incredible AI generation suite, even better than what they already have for their graphics. And I want to put that in this newsletter so that everyone from content creators to readers can, just take everything that's happening in the world of AI, and instead of having to digest it themselves, come to this Substack and have it digested for them and then portrayed in a way that relates back to what they do.
What a fantastic resource. I love that. That's incredible.
I'm excited to
Now,
launch it. I'm nervous, but excited.
we're all excited, but no pressure. No pressure. Obviously there's a lot in store, many days ahead to bring this great resource to the table. Now, obviously, it doesn't start, you can't do what you do in fantasy without having some passion for sports. Where did it all begin for you?
So sports wise, man, I was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, like that's apparently like in the back of a car somewhere behind Neyland Stadium or nearby. And so I'm a big Vols fan. I bleed orange, got my Lady Vols hat on right now. But I grew up watching the Tennessee Vols football team in the 90s back in their heyday, and grew up watching Michael Jordan. And so I was blessed as a kid to kind of witness, like, at least with Michael, one of the greatest things ever seen in sports, and grow up with that. Fell in love, played sports all through my youth. And then nowadays, I really just appreciate sports in general. I don't watch them as religiously as I used to, funnily enough. I watch football religiously. But sports for me have always just been a bit of an escape, and also have served forever as like an amazing social network, an excuse for me to go and spend time with my friends when, the alternative is that we sit around and do nothing. I'd rather go sit around and watch a sport and talk. And
I
so
love that.
I don't know if that was a concise enough answer, but I'm just a sports guy. I love it. I have been since
Great.
I was a little kid.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why we're all, brought into this world of sports, just because of the connections, the experiences that you share with friends, family, strangers. Obviously, communities can bond over
Yes.
a successful run, a playoff run, and really you see that out on the streets when everybody's wearing the jerseys, and I mean, it's just fun. Sports are special.
Yeah.
As a fan, though, is there any moment that was like the worst that you ever experienced as a fan?
Man, as a Tennessee Vols fan, there's a lot of them over the last 2 decades. But I would actually have to go to the NFL. I went to K through 12 school with Russell Wilson, and have just followed his career, like since high school all the way through college. And so that Seahawks Super Bowl against the Patriots, probably the lowest point in my career as a fan. Don't want to talk about it any further, Kevin, but that is it.
Hey, well, I'm right there with you. I was in the corner of that end zone, and not
You were
pretty.
at the game?
I was at the game.
The
Yep.
immaculate
Yep.
interception, son of a
Yep.
gun.
Unbelievable. I actually had a little video camera I was recording, and then as soon as that happens, it just drops to the ground, because it was, yeah. I still haven't even, obviously I've seen the highlights a million times, but I've never watched the full broadcast. I just can't do it.
Are you a Seahawks fan?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh, I didn't
absolutely.
even know that. Oh, well, I'm
Yep.
sorry to bring that up.
That's okay. Well, that's my worst moment too. So,
Yeah.
how about good moments? What was your favorite moment as a sports
Um,
fan?
8 years old, Tennessee wins the national championship. Feels like 98 is now our motto, of course. But I'm gonna be real, man. There were a couple. I still actually the Olympics are on right now, and when Michael Phelps broke the record for medals, that's probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen in sports. But
Yeah.
man, when Tennessee beat Alabama 2 years ago, and the sun was orange in the fourth quarter, and the everything was perfect. Massive score swings for the last fourth quarter. We lost the game twice in the fourth quarter, and then we win on a botched field goal. Nealon tears down the goalpost. I think that's my favorite for sure.
I love that. I love that. It sounds like the perfect setting for a volunteer fan to watch history. I love that.
Yeah,
So when it comes to fantasy sports, what was it that initially hooked you? When did you discover fantasy?
sure. It's I love telling this story. Rest in peace to my middle school math teacher, Nancy Pace Newton. She was an absolute just superstar as a teacher, and she was very interactive with her students. And instead of taking like algebra concepts and just doing them by the book, she'd create interactive exercises for us to learn the concepts. And when she got to the world of statistics and probabilities, she had created on her own a fantasy sports system for March Madness. And I was
Wow.
in, I think, sixth grade, seventh grade, played that and got hooked. I won it and was just like, this is my favorite thing ever. I don't even want to go to school anymore. I just wanted to play this all the time. And so the year after, maybe 2 years after, I got started in fantasy football. Won my first league I ever played in, and of course, when that happens, you're like, oh well, I'm in it for life. I'm an expert. I was not.
Yeah.
Still,
Yeah.
don't really consider myself an expert compared to a lot of people, but I've been playing. This will be my 19th year playing fantasy football, and I really just like it really came back to Nancy Pace Newton and at the collegiate school in Richmond, Virginia, in the middle school classroom doing March Madness of all things.
I love that. Now, what makes a great fantasy football league to you?
Well, this is a loaded question because you're the commissioner of the industry. So I would say number one, you got to have a good commissioner that listens and actually like embraces the league members and isn't just there like punching buttons. You can get away with a commissioner that punches buttons if you have something even more rare, which is a league that has 100% participation year round. And so I might argue that I feel like for me, I've been in leagues where the commissioners didn't do a lot, but the league was still fantastic because the individuals playing in it were active and engaged throughout the season. And I think, in my opinion, that's the core ingredient. It's really tough being in leagues where by week 8, half the people have checked out and so on and so forth. And it's why I'm actually such a big proponent of keeper and dynasty leagues, or at least
Mhm.
having one of those with your friend group if you have a redraft league to keep
Yeah.
that kind of engagement going when redraft season fizzles out.
I mean, I think that is the right answer. That's the foundation of the league, right? Obviously, the connections, the people. If you're in it together, if everybody's active,
Yeah.
it makes all the difference in the world. So when you're putting a league together, that's something that's so vital. You don't want to have just a couple It's even, I love 12-man leagues. I mean, I think that's the right way to go. But even if you have to go 10 or even 8, if it's the right people, it makes all the difference. So it's a
There's
great
a
answer.
there just a side note, there's a great project that I would love to hand off to you or anyone else, but I've wanted this for like 8 years now. Like a not a Tinder for fantasy sports, but a place where you can put your profile as a fantasy football player and sort of like there's a subreddit that is called Find a League where you can go post you're looking for a league. This is what you like.
Uh-huh.
Just automating that in a service so you can go on and find people to play with and have like resumes to make sure you're bringing in the right people. I would love something like that.
That's great too, because you could really find the right people. Like if you want to have just a league where it's all Seahawks fans, right? You can actually be purposeful with something like that. So it's a
Yeah.
good idea. I like that
If
idea.
somebody wants to make it, hit me up. I'll show you how to do it with AI.
I love it. Now, do you have any favorite settings, formats in fantasy?
I'm a big IDP proponent, but I don't recommend it for beginners. But it like fantasy football for me at the very core, I love it because it does what Madden did for me as a kid, and it makes me feel deeply ingrained in whatever's happening on the TV, even though I am not. And IDP then turns like the full game and makes it interesting rather than just like the offensive side of the ball. So my ideal format is 8 starters on offense, 8 starters on defense, and it would be like quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, and 2 offensive flex, and then 2 linebackers, 2 defensive linemen, 2 defensive backs, and 2 defensive flex. That is without question my favorite format in all of fantasy football, and I constantly like look for people that do that in their leagues, but they're growing. It's still a bit of a niche though, or niche, whatever
Yeah,
word
and
is.
obviously that would make game watching, pretty exciting because you got stuff going on everywhere, both sides of the ball. Great concept for sure. So when it comes to the community, like when did you discover it? When did you dive in? What's your history with that?
My first interaction with just like sports football media, if you will, in general was I think it was over a decade ago now. Adam Rank was on Twitter and was just like rambling on about Marshawn Lynch. And I went in and hit him with this big statistical breakdown, arguing that he was the best running back in the league at the time. And Adam responded to me. And as a kid in his early 20s, that was amazing. And it kind of like opened the door a little bit for me to say, okay, well, these people are approachable. I wonder if over time I can get to a place where I can be a part of that community. And so in 2017, I launched a podcast and website called Dynasty ER with my friend Eric. It went on for a little less than a year. He and I had a bit of a falling out. Love him to death. He's still a good friend, but he was focused on his own career and didn't view that as something that could turn into anything. I had an opposite view of it. And then that was kind of my intro. And I know we'll talk about mental health stuff later, but I had a quick intro in the industry. The podcast did really well. And then I stepped away to go work on myself. And just in the last couple of years, I've started to get back into things.
And also a good time to share your background. You have a career like in music. Like what was that? What was that? Briefly describe that whole other world.
Oh, dude, that was wild. Well, my family are educators, and I dropped out of college after a semester to go pursue music, and it didn't go over well. But I used to be a journalist in the music industry. I don't like this word because it feels very like high and mighty, but technically my job was a tastemaker. So all of the record labels would email me all of their new music every week, every day. I'd go through all of it, and then I'd do post and album reviews and so forth. And got lucky that the site that I worked for called Earmilk at the time in the early 2010s had gone from just a regular music blog to like one of the top 7 trafficked music publications in the world, and so on and so forth. So right time, right place. I was really lucky. I was 19 years old when I started doing that. And it was really, really cool. I'm very, very thankful and fortunate for my time there. I finished my career in the music industry as a PR agent for an international, or not a PR agent, excuse me, as the VP of an international PR agency running their US branch. And then had to step away from it all because of a pretty serious back injury that took about 2 years to get over. And after that was done, I kind of shifted my focus to other things.
Right on, right on. Yeah, and obviously back injuries can certainly have an impact on life and on mental health as well. So let's tie that into because where that mental health journey began.
Sure. It's a long one, and I don't want to take up this whole episode. So give me a second. Let me think how I want to break this down. I'll just start at the beginning. I was adopted. I was born into a pretty rough situation, and then was in like an awful situation through foster care until I was about 4 years old. Got adopted and went from like the worst situation to one of the top situations. And a very well put together family that's done very, very well for themselves, are very loving. The extended family is as well. And despite all of that, I think those first 4 years of my life did a number on me. And so I kind of struggled here and there. I did fine with things that I was able to like get fully interested in, but I would also pull back and struggle with whether it was school or jobs with areas that for some reason were just more challenging for me than others. And actually, that leaving the music industry was my first real wake up call that I needed to do personal work. And I tried, but I wasn't ready. And part of the triggering for that was when I moved to Atlanta when I was 23. I had dreams of launching a music app that took people's music taste. And actually, not to bring up Tinder again, I'm not on Tinder, don't go look me up on there. But the idea was like to match people for dates based on their music preferences, kind of just a gimmick ripoff of Tinder. And on my way down to Atlanta, the moving company stole my record collection, my hard drive, all of my like recording equipment. I kind of lost everything that I had built over the previous 7 years in the music industry. And it wasn't actually the back surgery that came after that. That's the reason I left the music industry. And that was really, really tough. It did a number on me. And I started to get really, really depressed, like suicidally depressed. And then over time, that blossomed into also a massive anxiety problem. And it's why I left the Dynasty ER and the industry about 7 years ago, because I realized, okay, well, I had this life event in my 20s. I had one when I was very young as well. And I'm continuing to kind of just say, I'm going to power through and I need to just like pull myself up by my bootstraps and be okay. And I just realized that that wasn't the case. And I really to go do the things that I want to do and be the entrepreneur and the creator and the helper that I want to be. I had to get my ducks in a row between my ears. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. I've been in pretty intensive therapy, working through depression and anxiety and some childhood trauma and all of those sort of things. And last year, I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to start like dipping my toes back in the water with the fantasy industry. And over the last 14 months, I've gotten to where I'm not just dipping my toes. I think I'm like waist deep. And I hope by the end of this year, I'm all the way in. And so my advice for anyone that is working on self-growth is just to be patient with yourself and be patient with your goals. And like we talked about earlier, Goodguy.ai and the Substack and the website and all that. Sure, I wanted to have it launched in like November last year, but it wasn't the right time for me. And so I think part of that is growing up and learning to be like mature and understand yourself. But for me personally, just learning to be patient and give myself gratitude and just take my time with things because I know they're worth pursuing rather than rushing to the finish line because I think they're awesome is a big shift in where I am now versus where I was, even just like 8 years ago.
Well, that's a great mentality, a great lesson to learn. Obviously, is that patience with yourself. That's wonderful to hear. Obviously, it takes a lot of courage to dive back in. You must have a passion for fantasy football and the community. So that's I'm glad you made it because I remember the 14 months ago, a few months before the expo when you just kind of burst onto the scene and just were everywhere. Connecting with people and really just putting yourself out there, getting involved, and then you made it to the expo, and I'm sure that had a huge impact on you.
Yeah,
We'll get to the expo in a bit, but such a special event for sure. But it takes a lot of courage to go there and to get uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, we'll talk about the expo in a bit. But when it comes to AI, when did you get a zest for that, or when
Oh
did you get
man.
a spark for AI?
I think I've been into it my whole life, but I haven't been working with it because it didn't seem real. Like it was just some far off, unattainable thing that really up until 2 years ago wasn't really accessible to the everyman. You had to like go to school and get a degree in machine learning and then like learn to build on this stuff that wasn't even ready but yet. And so AI has been around, just a side note, it's been in everything for like 20 years. But in 2022, ChatGPT's first like fully public functional version released, and that really piqued my interest. And then when ChatGPT 3 came out, I dove fully in. It was about January last year. And so I'm a big sci-fi guy. I'm a big tech guy. I love both of those fields and concepts, and the emergence of actually functional AI that we can use ourselves has been like a dream that's just come from the heavens and been put in front of me. And I really do enjoy it. I bore my friends to death because I talk about it so much. And so, um, was a ramble of an answer, but the short answer is probably the last 7 or 8 years, I've been keeping a pretty deep thumb on it. And then 2 years ago, I started to really dive in with my own two hands.
That's awesome. Now, what role do you see AI playing in content creation in the fantasy space?
I could talk about. Do you want me to talk about the roles it's already playing or future roles?
Yeah, currently, and then what you're seeing, where it's going.
So right now there are so many different tools that I don't know that it's prevalent in our field yet, but a lot of business podcasts, a lot of business media are using a handful of tools to accelerate and augment a lot of their work. Not necessarily the things they're saying, but like for this show, you got to go put in the SEO keywords and you got to go figure out a description of the show and you got to go do all this grunt work. People are just doing that with AI now, and you can't tell. I do believe that I'm not going to name the name of the platform, but there's one or two platforms now when you go read their player blurbs, that is 100% AI generated.
Hmm.
And I think that the role it's playing right now is not as effective as it should be. And I think that's because there's a lack of education and resources out there to guide people on how to use it properly. But right now it's everywhere, but on a very minimal scale. And so if I wanted to talk about like the future, I do believe in the next 2 to 3 years it's going to be more important than most of what is going on behind the scenes at any brand. um, Especially in an industry like ours that is built on statistical analysis and probability weighing. It's on that short list of fields where AI is going to, in some ways, probably usurp human output in the next decade. And I think we'll start to see some examples of that as soon as like this year, even. I know of quite a few different AI startups that seem pretty powerful. The technology is going to keep accelerating, but I don't view it as a replacement technology for our field. And I think that's what gets people really hung up about it. Um, the fantasy industry, and particularly like content creation for this field, has a very, very strong human element. People want to go hear from an expert, hear from somebody that has lots of years of experience and somebody that they can kind of relate to and trust. And you could go look at even like the fantasy footballers that are on. I know you had a couple of them on your show. They are, in many ways, they've been the top dogs forever because of their personalities, not actually their
Mhm.
advice. And not that they have bad advice, but I think that aspect of this field is safe. And even when a year or two from now, when it's just really easy to like create your own deep fake and like create an AI persona and this, you could do that right now if you want to. But I don't know that that is going to have the same instant appeal and replacement appeal that, for example, call centers are experiencing right now, where they're getting wiped out across the globe because it's
Yeah.
just easier to automate it with AI. So it's a bit of a runaround answer. I think its role in the future is as an advisor and as a counterpart, or not counterpart, as an accomplice to everything that we do in this space. And I do
Yeah, it makes
believe that
sense.
there's going to be areas where entire systems are run by AI and people go to that for content rather than people too. I just don't know what the numbers would look like versus non-AI content.
Sure, sure. Yeah, people aren't calling call centers for entertainment, whereas
No,
fantasy
exactly.
content,
Exactly.
it's that entertainment value is hard to compete with for sure. The connections, all that. So people are safe out there, but obviously you are making it a mission to educate people on AI. You, like I said earlier, you've done a great job with connecting with people. I'm sure, from your perspective, it's been fun to be able to interact and connect with so many people in the industry. What have you taken away with those interactions and the conversations you've had with others in the industry
In relation to AI,
in relation to AI, and also just on a personal note when it comes to the connections you've made?
yeah, well, let's go on the personal note first. People like you, Kevin, like that are very prominent in the industry. It is a unique field. And I have experience, like we mentioned earlier, with another fairly unique field in the music industry. And the stark difference between the fantasy industry and that industry is that the amount of awfulness that goes on in relationships and the amount of like
Sure.
predatory nature of business that happens in that industry is for the most part non-existent here. You get to the highest level of this industry and of course everyone's competing and it's more financial than it is touchy-feely. But what I love about this industry is that I can go, like, I can DM you and ask you to get on the phone with me to talk through something. I can go hit up someone like Bob Harris, who's like one of the godfathers of fantasy football. And a guy like that is available for everyone, and he'll respond to a DM if you're not just spamming him. And it's really, really unique. There is this very, very, I think, empowering thread of community that runs through the fantasy industry where people are willing to take time and help other people that are getting involved. And my theory on it is that this industry is still, it's a hobby. It's become an industry, billions of dollars worth. But in the end, the content creators and the people that created the industry itself 30, 40 years ago are still around. And it all started as a hobby. And for the most part, the people that are making the jump to create content and businesses are coming from a hobby. And so it's really unique. It's a very supportive and wonderful place. And I do call the fantasy industry my second family. And I don't say that as like a gimmick. I genuinely mean it. Through a lot of the mental health struggles I've had over the last 5 years, even like stepping away and being able to hold on to a handful of relationships, the support and the openness and the camaraderie, as I've said 15 times already, is just like bar none. And so that's my take on, at least on the relationships. It's an awesome industry to get out there. And if you go to my Twitter profile at Ronnie Evans on Twitter, I have a pinned post. I'm probably never taking it down. It's like, something along the lines of like, if you appreciate yourself and put yourself out there, this industry will like support you, and they are there for you. So get out there and like grow and connect. And I stand by that. It's what I did over the last, as you mentioned, the last 14 months. And I feel like I'm in a pretty good place right now because of it.
For sure. How about the AI on the AI front? Some of the takeaways.
People are scared.
Yeah.
It's,
what are the biggest misconceptions out there?
well, I think we touched on one a little bit earlier. Like, I think a lot of people feel like, this thing's coming for me. And nah, it's not in this industry right now. So that's one misconception. I think too, that because you have to still kind of know how to use the tools properly to get the right output from them. There's a lot of people I've met with. I think I've almost 100 meetings over the last year now. And I would say like at least 80% of them are people who are like, yeah, I've used AI and I didn't really like it. Or I haven't looked into it yet because it seems complicated. Or like, I tried to do this and it didn't work. And when I hear that, all I hear is, no one's shown you how to do it properly yet, because what you're saying doesn't work does. You just have to know how to do it. And it's actually at fault of all of these major companies like Google and Anthropic and OpenAI and Microsoft and Llama, like Facebook. They're all putting out these super powerful tools with this like Death Star control panel, and they're not giving any real guides on truly how to use them. It's just surface level stuff. And so I think people are just still very much ill-informed, and it's not their fault. People are busy. AI is a sci-fi concept that wasn't real, like I said, until like 2 years ago. And they've got other things to do. The last thing I would add, though, is that this industry is full of people who have made their name for themselves with a system that works. And unless you can go to them and show them an AI system that does what they do better, they don't care. And that has been probably the biggest, when I get higher up in the industry, the biggest pushback I've run into is actually justified. It's like, I enjoy doing the research. My research works. I'm sure AI could help speed it up a little bit, but it's not for me. And that, I think that's totally valid.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, obviously, if it's not broke, don't fix it or something
Right,
like
right.
that. Right. Now, do you have any concerns with where AI might take us, and what are you most excited for when it comes to the future of AI and fantasy content?
Concerns about the industry or just in general?
Just about, well, yeah, go both ways. I mean, obviously the industry, but also just society. That'd be good.
Sure. I do worry about the onslaught of low effort content that already emerged last year, and it works. It's very viral. I'm not going to name names, but there are some accounts that came out of nowhere and were posting like massive summaries every day. And now they have 50, 60, 70,000 followers. That's just all AI. That's just AI output, AI output, AI output. And, I support it. I'm like, heck yeah, like keep pushing the envelope. Let's get this thing going. But I think it takes away from the really, really hard work that people are putting in. And I worry about the ramifications over the next 5 years to where like a McDonald's worker can go hop on their phone and create a super comprehensive article on Saquon Barkley that's arguably better than most articles you would read from high profile writers.
Yeah.
I worry about that. And I don't think there's any way to combat that, which is why I tell everyone, like, like it or not, you should at least keep an eye on this and learn about it so that you can adapt. And I have the same worries for just humanity in general. The ability, it's the same worry people had when like social media blew up. Kind of like, is this content all really good for us? It seems low effort. It seems like you can manipulate people easier and so on and so forth. So without getting too deep into all of that, AI makes it all easier. And that is something like, I'm an AI evangelist. I'm not one of those ding dongs who come out and tell you it's all roses. There's a portion of this that is tough and it's probably not good. I just think the good outweighs the negatives.
Well, it's obviously it's an intriguing topic. It's definitely something that's going to impact us in one way or the other. And I'm glad that you're doing your research and it's going to help a lot of people in this community with AI. So again, you've done some great things, putting together resources. I'm excited to see what comes of that. Now, in regards to the mental health stuff, again, you did the Judgement Seesaw. What an incredible series you put together. What did you
Thank you.
learn most? Yeah, what did you learn most from that experience?
I'll tell you what, man. We like in that show, we covered just about every topic I could think of. Everything from like domestic abuse to civil wars and like trauma from that to PTSD and like neurodivergency and depression, anxiety and bipolar disorder and sexism and like just like the whole gambit. And what I learned was you peel all that back, I think people just want to be loved and they want to be able to live their life without a lot of negative pressure on them for their differences. And 30 interviews, I didn't run across a single person that disagreed with like that as part of their goal for, the community and what they want to see from other people. They like, we are all so unique and different. And we all have these life paths that create roadblocks that are different than everyone else's. And it can have over time these compounding effects that make us have these little idiosyncrasies that can be hard for other people to understand. And man, I think my biggest takeaway is like, I felt really good when I was done because I realized that even the people that joined the Judgement Seesaw this last go around that aren't mental health sufferers, to put it that way, still we're like, but it's different. It's a struggle. And like, we should embrace that and be supportive of these people rather than like turning our back on them because we don't understand. And so it's just this vibe of acceptance and like a need for, again, that word camaraderie was probably my biggest takeaway. And I would add a second takeaway. A lot of these people, if you're watching Kevin's show religiously to like learn more about mainstays in the industry, it seems like at least like a third of them have struggles that they've really had to fight through. And I just would say, like, if you're sitting there looking at someone that's at the top of this industry and like, oh, well, I could never be like that because they're perfect and they just crush everything. No, it's not the case. It seems like everyone has had something they've had to overcome that's pretty substantial. And so that's my summation of all of that.
That's a great point. I mean, everybody has an inspirational story in one way or the other, and it's fun. I just, I'm biased, but I love connecting with people and hearing their journeys, hearing
Right.
about their journeys, and it is that it's truly inspirational to hear where people have come from. Everybody's got a different story, but there's always something you can glean from that. And I think that your show was fantastic on that front.
Thank
and,
you.
Again, on my end, I love hearing it from people too. What did you learn most about yourself during that marathon of content?
So that's a great question. I think I shared this with you off air and a few other people, but looking at my story and like stepping away from everything and then being nervous about dipping my toes back in the water, I have been in many ways paralyzed about doing content for the last year. And I think it's because I've been out of the game and I've allowed these invisible walls to go up in front of me. So I learned that I can do it and I still got it. that was really my takeaway from it. Also, like, I'm not alone. And but I already knew that with all the conversations I had over the year and the mental health advocacy I had done that had great reception. But forcing myself to like bang through 30 interviews in 30 days with a couple hours of prep work for each of them, it was a lot. It was like not the normal way to get back into things at all. And I think I did okay. And in the end, I walked away feeling like, okay, I am ready. I've done a lot of work, and I think the time is now. And I was worried about that before that show, and I left the show and left the series like, okay, we're good to go. So it was really good for me. It was very empowering and like very, it gave me a lot of confidence.
It's incredible because from the outside, I was worried that, man, that would be so much to take on, and that
It
there
was.
could be negatives. But I mean, you absolutely crushed it. I spoke with you later on in that month, and you got through it. Amazing. The content was incredible. Just the fact that you could put yourself out there and do that, it was one of the coolest things I've seen in this community.
Well,
For
thank
you
you,
to
Kevin.
take on, that challenge and knock it out of the park. I think it's awesome. And like I said, like you said, it showed you that you can do it. And then
Yeah.
I think you couple that with your concept of, being patient with yourself. I mean, that's a winning strategy, I think. And I'm happy that you found that.
Thank you.
Yeah. What advice do you have for people? Just general advice, tips and tricks for people dealing with some mental health issues, concerns.
Oh man, I'm going to pull out from what other people said on that show. Like, if you are dealing with any sort of struggle, there's a great exercise where you can run through and look at the negative feelings you're having in your life and what you're dealing with, and ask yourself if you can identify really what the core reason is. And if you can't, you need to go talk to a therapist. And that's just it. It's binary. And then beyond that, even if you don't have things that you're working through in life that are kind of inexplicable and you don't understand why they're affecting you the way they are, you should still go talk to a therapist. Therapists are great, even if it's like twice a year. Just check in with somebody and let them like unload on them, let them know, and you might find that there's some pretty good insights on helping you navigate life. But advice for people that are dealing with any sort of mental health struggle right now is that, like, number one, don't battle it alone. You have to find other people, and you got to get a support system. It could be your therapist, it could be your friends, whatever it is. You cannot do it alone. Secondly, you got to like show gratitude to yourself. It's really, really easy when you are in a depressed mode, or if you're bipolar and you're having a delusional moment, whatever it is, it's really hard in those moments to like reach out to other people and assume that and believe that you can surround yourself with support. You can. Don't believe that delusion. It is not real. There are people out there. If you're in this industry, there is an army of people that are there to support you. So don't do it alone. Talk to a therapist and get help. Don't have shame about it. Be empowered by it and be proud of yourself. And just show yourself gratitude. And as you work through things, don't forget to like check in and say, pat on my back. I did good today. Because it's a tough journey. It's not easy, and there's no quick fix. So I hope I explained all that okay. But
Oh, you nailed it. I mean, that's a great message for sure. And I like how you brought up, obviously getting yourself a community, a support system. Let's talk about that fantasy football community. Talk about the expo. We brought it up earlier, but you going to the expo, putting yourself out there. What was that experience like for you? What was your favorite event of the expo, and how excited are you for 2024?
man, last year, so it's I get to go this year as an expo veteran. Last year was my first time, and man, there's a lot of people. I tell people my favorite interaction I had, or least favorite, was I went up to Andy Behrens and didn't recognize him. And at one point was like, I know you, Andy. I know the name Andy. You're not Andy Holloway, are you? And like ever since then, I have just been horrified about that. I'm sure he doesn't care. We had a good laugh about it. But
Yeah.
the expo itself, like as a first timer, it can be a little overwhelming because there are there's a core of like 50 or 60 people that have been around for a while or just kind of at the top of the industry, and a lot of them are there, and a lot of them are just like, they're not there behind a rope. They're there at the bar waiting for you to walk up and talk to them.
Yeah.
And that can be really, really intimidating. But what the expo does, I think, that is really special is it shows the truth of this industry that we talked about earlier, that it's very open and it's very supportive. And when you get to be in a one-on-one or in an in-person scenario with a room full of leaders, and they're all willing to take a moment and talk to you, and you realize that they're actually pretty good people and they're not out of touch with what's going on, it's just a total game changer. So for me, it changed my perspective a little bit. I kind of, as you had alluded to, I think I knew that about the industry just because I'm so unrelenting about like just connecting with people. I'll just blow up your DMs until you like say something to me. But I got there and going like to meet someone like Scott Fish, who's like one of the most famous people in all of fantasy football. And he's out there just the whole weekend talking to this person, talking to that person, making a friend here, talking about projects, giving advice. There are all these panels where you can go and learn amazing things. And then the final day, the Sunday, go around, and I think I'm pretty plugged in with the industry, and I like to think I keep an eye on stuff, but there's like 200 brands. None of us can keep track of all of it. And you get to walk through, and there's like 50 of them, and they have tables, and you can just go learn. And my favorite one last year wasn't even a website. There was a guy who was, I wish I knew who it was, but he had this thing called draft dice. Did you see those last year?
I did. Those were awesome.
They're amazing. Like these little dice with each position on each time. And instead of drafting normally for the listeners or the viewers, you roll these dice and you have to pick one of the three positions that is on the top. And I was just like, that's so unique. And I would have never, ever heard of this if I didn't go to the expo. So
That's great. Yeah, great point for sure. It will surprise you. You'll meet people that you didn't know existed, but then you'll absolutely think they're amazing, or the product that they're representing is incredible. I have, countless stories of people that just, blew me away. And like you said, everybody's there to connect. There's nobody behind a rope, like you said. Even like a Scott Fish. I mean, he often talks about how, he's constantly having regrets of, like, oh, I wish I would have spent more time with that person. He's constantly wanting to connect with people, and also constantly thinking about, how did that go? How was that conversation? Oh, I wish I would have done this different. Like, everyone's human, and everyone's out there to connect.
Yes.
And bring this industry forward. And it's a special event. So if you haven't been to the expo, get there. If you can't make it this year, make it next year. Everybody that goes to the expo, they come back the next year for the most part, because it's such a special event.
It's fantastic. And I think if you watch this episode, it sounds like maybe it'll be out after the expo or before it. But if you're watching it and you don't believe me, go to the expo and you'll be like, oh, Ronnie was telling the truth. This industry is amazing. People are very friendly. They're open. They're willing to help each other. And you get to go see that in person and like make friends. And if you're trying to grow your follower base, get a couple hundred followers at the expo each year too, which is nice.
Absolutely. Great points for sure. Hey, let's dive into some rapid fire questions. I'll just throw out some questions. Give me, first things that come to mind. What do you enjoy most about what you're doing in the industry right now?
The connections and the people. If you told me a year, like even just 2 years ago, that I would be getting on a podcast with you and be friends with a guy like Scott Fish and have meetings with people like Bob Harris and so on and so forth. And I know I'm listing bigger names, but then like the hundreds of people that you work way down the ladder, just the people are awesome. And I would be remiss to say that I'm not very grateful and humbled that I've been accepted and have been able to I haven't climbed the ladder in terms of like the actual industry yet, but I think on a social front, I know a lot of people now, and that empowers me to keep going.
I love that. What are your favorite hobbies, interests, activities outside of fantasy sports and AI?
Yeah, okay. We can leave music out of it too.
Okay.
I actually went to school for graphic design. Done a lot of graphic design behind the scenes in the industry over the years, but I love art. And man, this is such like a lame answer, but for real, I devour TV shows. It's like how I decompress at night. I've watched more than I'm willing to admit.
What's your favorite TV show?
Well, such a loaded question, Kevin.
You can list multiple. It's okay.
No, I would say that I still think the best TV show ever made was Batman the Animated Series from the 90s.
Okay.
I know it sounds like a joke answer, but it is like it's pure Kino. It's perfect cinema. I don't know. This year I actually really enjoyed Three Body Problem. I've read the books and they're really like super out there. Thought that show was great. Um, I don't know. I kind of like everything. I would say
Okay.
the most impactful show that I've ever watched was Game of Thrones back in the day. Super unique.
For sure. Are you watching House of Dragon?
I'm not. I'm waiting until I can binge it because I'm still annoyed with how Game of Thrones ended, and I just am like, I'm just.
Okay.
I'll
Well,
watch it all.
I
when it's
waited.
done.
I waited on House of Dragon. Now I'm at the final of these, first 2 seasons.
Sure.
It's a slow start, but it's pretty darn good. I'd recommend it. What's your all-time favorite movie?
Whoo! Golly. I'll tell you my favorite movie I've watched recently is Deadpool and Wolverine. I saw it 2 days
Was it
ago.
good? Was it good?
It was. I'll tell you what that movie is. If you went into that movie and you're like, I want to go see a good plot, there isn't one. But you don't care because Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman have spent 6 years like making this thing happen, and the love they have for those characters bleeds through. I think 30 minutes of that movie is just him and Wolverine running around slicing people open. And it's like, as a comic book fan, that's all I've ever wanted to see was Wolverine do that, and we never got it. And so we finally got to see it on an R-rated, and it's just hilarious, and you laugh the whole time. I kind of walked away and was like, that's one of the more perfect movies I've ever seen. And I would never tell somebody that it's like, on the level of an Oscar winner or anything like that.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
does what it set out to do perfectly.
I love it.
So
I love it. How about an all-time favorite sports movie?
all-time favorite sports movie, man. I think I'd go with The Longest Yard. And the Adam Sandler one.
Yeah.
I love that movie. I also I maybe would usurp it would be Basketball,
Okay.
which that's just absurd movie, which I still holds a dear place in my heart for all the mockery it does of everything involved in sports. I found it really funny.
How
But
how about on the music front? Obviously you got a big background. Who are your favorite artists, musicians, bands of all time?
My favorite band of all time is probably a tie between Led Zeppelin and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Red Hot Chili Peppers, when I was like 7 years old, my mom dropped me off at Plan 9 Records to go do some shopping down the street. And I walked in, and whoever you are, if I ever meet you again, I will thank you. But this like very cool looking, looked like he was early 20s, late teens dude with tattoos and rings and all this stuff. I was like, I need a cool album to listen to, and I don't want my mom to know about it. And he was like, I got one. And he gave me Out in LA, the Red Hot Chili Peppers mixtape. And it's like super vulgar and probably wouldn't be approved by my parents. And it turned me on to them. And I love that band. I love their totally different sound. But man, there's just nothing. There's just never been a band with more pound for pound talent than Led Zeppelin. Like every single one of the people in that band could be recognized as one of, if not the best to do what they ever did. And man, you put on Led Zeppelin anytime, any place, any occasion, I'll be fine.
It's a great answer for sure. Now you mentioned that you went to school with Russ. What was that experience like?
Man, I don't want to give too many details from that. Just I think privacy is good.
Sure.
But Russ, I would tell you this. Like we knew when he was like a freshman in high school, we were like, this dude's playing pro. But we thought it was baseball.
Really?
And then his sophomore year, he jumped in and we won 3 straight championships in football. And it was, I think other people have probably, hopefully, know someone or at least experienced seeing what eventually was a professional athlete at the high school level. It's not a unique thing. They all they run their schools. Some of them you just know. I watched Derrick Henry's highlights a couple weeks ago and I was like, this is hilarious. I bet these people knew when he was in 5th grade.
Yeah.
But Russ was always a pretty thoughtful person. And just, I don't know. He changed the legacy he left for collegiate was that school was a private school, didn't recruit, didn't have a massive student body. And he showed up And then I think they won like 7 state championships over the decade after he left. Like he just changed the culture immediately.
Wow.
And not only did he change the culture at collegiate, but he changed the culture of Virginia sports. And Virginia was not a recruiting hotbed for high school sports until Russell Wilson emerged on the scene and dominated out of nowhere at this little private school that people didn't pay attention to. And then now it's like this whole ecosystem that's not that dissimilar to a place like Georgia where I live now. But it was pretty cool. My only fun story is I intercepted him once in practice. It's the highlight of my career doing anything. I was really young though. I think it was like 8th grade. So
you and Malcolm Butler.
yeah, shut up.
hey, I'm hurting myself by saying that. That's the way I cope. It's the way I cope with that moment.
Yeah, Malcolm learned it from me.
There you go. You jumped that route in practice. You knew it. You knew it was coming. What are you most grateful for at this time?
Man, I think I'm grateful for people like you that are out here doing things that frankly align with my vision for what I want to do in the industry as well. You do a great job of embracing people's stories and helping them like showcase what they have going on and creating a platform for people to tell others about themselves and like feel empowered. And I think we've got a lot of people like that in this industry. Not as much content like that, but it's getting there. I think that actually I take that back. There's plenty of content like that baked into shows, but in terms of sole focus, we've got like you, we've got Casey Kasem, a couple others, and then I maybe I throw Judgement Seesaw into the mix now too. I love that. But I think, no offense to you guys, I'm still just mostly grateful for my parents and my brother and my immediate family and extended family too. I really, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, I won the lottery. I went from
awesome.
like certified going to be the worst of the worst scenario possible. Definitely would have ended up on the streets as a drug addict and so forth, and got just taken out of that and dropped right into a very amazing situation. And I think that is, I've shared this with you before, but I don't mind sharing it on the show. But I do sometimes lack a bit of a killer instinct when it comes to like business or like sharing things. And I disagree. I don't think I lack one. I just think I'm wired where there's an underlying need to help others because I feel indebted. It's like built into my DNA. You know, I got lucky in a way that most people don't. And so I'll always remember that.
I love that. And that answer, that's gratitude, right? And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that you say is, or you provide as a great, part of dealing with mental health concerns. It's just finding some gratitude, finding something to be thankful for. And I love your story. It supersedes the game of fantasy football. So everything you're doing in the community is pretty darn special. Can you
Thanks,
name yeah, absolutely. Can you name a few of the people that have just had an impact on you during your experience in the fantasy community?
Yeah, number one, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I firmly believe that there is a subset of about 20 people in all of fantasy sports and like even like sports analysis that know better than this guy when it comes to X's and O's. And then it's him and everyone else. And that's my friend Jeff DiMatteo. You can find him on Twitter at NFL DiMatteo. He runs Gridiron Ratings. They just pulled in Jordan Vanek. Actually, Jordan's doing all of his DFS content there. I've been a part of Gridiron Ratings for the last half decade. I did their logo if you want to go see graphic design stuff from me. But Jeff is my best friend in the industry, and I don't have any problem telling people that for multiple years, including this one, I wasn't available to do all the research I wanted to for fantasy, and I didn't need to because I had Jeff and was just spend an hour with him a day on the phone, and we talked through players and this and that. But he coached in college. He really truly understands the X and O's of football and how to apply them back to fantasy sports better than just about anyone I've ever run into. And I know a lot of people in this industry, and I hope I'm not disrespecting anyone there. Jeff's special, and but he's not an outspoken person on social media, so I think he flies under the radar. Go give him a follow. If you take anything away from this episode, like number one would be don't run away from AI. At least just keep an eye on it. But number two might be to go give Jeff support. He's really, really smart and does a really great job at what he does. And he also has been there for like with me and for me as I've gone through this whole journey. He's put up with a lot of BS for me too. And has all had is just a steady flow with things. And so I love him to death. I would say you. Another one I would put out there is Leo Pasiga. Leo is Leo is like, you talk to Leo and you feel good. I don't know how to describe him in any better way than like you just feel better when you talk to him about things. He's like this. He's not an old man or anything, but he has this wise old like wizardry about him that is also very caring. And he's been a great supporter. He's helped me navigate a few things. We'll just rattle off a few more names. Josh Larkey, Andrew Cooper, and Dave Kluge. Those three guys have been by my side helping me with the mental health stuff for years now. And I consider them three of my like core friends in the industry, and I love them to death. But they do really, really good work. And if you're a fantasy football aficionado, you know who those three guys are. But if you're still learning the industry, go follow them and keep up with their content. They're part of the leadership of the industry now when it comes from content creators. Scott Fish has been great. And then like, I don't know, man, I've connected with so many people over the last 2 years. We could do this for an hour.
Hey, let's just go give them all hugs at the expo.
Yeah, we'll do that. I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll come back after you post this episode. I'll quote tweet it sometime after the expo with a gallery of me hugging all of these people, and I'll be like, here's the answer.
So there you go. Perfect. Now, what advice do you have for people that want to dive more into the fantasy industry?
Man, if you want to dive into the fantasy industry, this is it. I know it's cliche, but just do it. Just do it. A lot of people, I think, don't, because they worry that they won't be received because their advice or analysis or content isn't going to be up to snuff. That's not true. That is not true. There's a lot of people in this industry that are now at the talk that don't give the best advice. It's not about that. It's about being consistent with your content and just putting yourself out there. And if you can do that and be a good person, you will get embraced by this industry. You will have a career eventually, and you will be okay. But don't hesitate because of hesitations about you. If you hesitate about anything, just hesitate about how much time you can commit. And if you've got an hour or two a day, use those hour or two. But even still, just, I don't know, man, just like get started and put yourself out there and reach out to people that can help. People will help. If you reach out to someone like me or Kevin, any of the people we've listed, maybe not like some of them because their inboxes are so busy that if you don't follow them, they won't see it. But there's an army of people that are available to help you get your start and are available to like show you the right path. And there's many sites where if you reach out to them and say, hey, I have not done fantasy football content yet, but I really want to. Can I start like with a column a week or a column a month with you just to get my toes? Yes, absolutely. Like immediately. Yes. From a lot of different sites. So just get out there and do it.
It's great advice. Great advice. Anything else that we haven't covered that you want to share before we close things out?
Man, selfishly, just to run back on Goodguy.ai.
Yeah.
So if you go on my Twitter profile, there's a link in there. For now, it's going to stay up. Eventually, it'll point to a website, but it's a cal linked where you can go into my business calendar and book a meeting with me to talk about artificial intelligence. I love doing those. Whatever your questions are, whether it be a tool that you're trying to use that you can't figure out or just ways to integrate AI into one of your workflows, I would love to meet with you, whoever you are, and just talk through it. There's that. Like I said, Goodguy.ai.substack.com is going to be live at some point in the next 2.5 weeks. It's either before the expo or after that. We'll see. But that will be a great resource for people that are trying to like learn about AI and also apply it back to what they do. And then I just want to shout out a couple of the brands that I've been working with or talking with over the last year that are doing really special things with AI. I mentioned Rotorbot.ai earlier. One of my dear friends, Michael Chang, is an absolute wizard. He has something called the Fantasy Playbook. It's really, really good. I encourage you to check out his work. Ben Dominguez just did Huddle Chat, Huddle Vision. That has a lot of legs behind it and a lot of steam right now. It's definitely worth keeping an eye on and trying to get in early with. My friend Connor Ludlow, he runs SportsMind AI, which is also another really, really fantastic AI-centric kind of empowerment system to help fantasy players and content creators. It looks like Player Prop AI. That's going to be on a stage at the expo. Just learned about RotoGPT at the the FSGA conference.
Yeah.
And then there's more. There's like Pine Sports. There's Goodguy.ai. There's lots out there. And I just want to throw it out as a final thing. If you listen to all that, that's a lot. I don't think there's a lot of people that have time to go like, okay, well, I'm going to go spend an hour and learn this tool, and then I'm going to go learn that one, and I'm going to go. What will happen with Goodguy.ai's website when it launches? One of the first features of it is going to be a home where all of these companies' tools are put together next to each other, so you can play test them side by side and judge them and figure out like which ones work best for you for your specific needs.
I love it.
We've gotten it cleared with pretty much all of them. They're all in to do that because I think they're very competitive and eager to like pit their stuff up against each other. But I'm hoping that the Goodguy.ai website, when it launches and by this time next year, can be kind of a landing pad and a nexus for like just getting in tune with AI and what's going on in our industry and allowing people to interact with it in a way that's less daunting than just pulling down a brand new app and trying to figure it out on your own.
It's fantastic. Now, where can listeners and viewers find you?
Well, right here, right now, but after this, on Twitter at Ronnie A. Evans. It's RONNIE A. Evans. And then also, if you do that, if you want to follow just one account, go follow the Goodguy.ai account on Twitter. But both of those, and then you can find me at the expo in Canton, Ohio in about a week.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Ronnie. Absolute pleasure to have you on here, my friend. And I cannot wait to see you in Canton.
Dude, I can't wait to see you too soon, my friend. It's going to be amazing. Again, shout out to the expo. If you aren't going this year, figure out how to get there next year. If you love fantasy football, you should be there.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.